everything is connected. You've heard that phrase, right? A million times, probably.
Oh, absolutely.
And it feels nice, maybe profound for a moment, but then it just kind of hangs there, a bit fuzzy.
Exactly. It often lives in that sort of philosophical space, doesn't it? Hinting at something, but not really explaining how, more feeling than physics.
Right. But what if it wasn't just a feeling? What if everything is connected, was like a literal, physical, maybe even mathematical thing?
Well, that's exactly what we're diving into today. We're looking at motion theory.
Yeah, forget the vague vibes. This theory suggests it's about the actual structure of the universe.
Precisely. We've been digging into these excerpts from Everything is Connected Motion Theory's Ultimate Truth, and the main argument is that this connection isn't some side effect. It's fundamental. It is the structure.
Okay, let's get right into it then. What's the core idea here? How does motion theory explain this connection?
So the central concept, and it is a pretty big shift, is that motion isn't just something stuff does. It's what everything fundamentally is.
Wait, say that again? Motion is what things are.
Yeah. Think about matter, light, space, energy, even time. Motion theory views all of them as different arrangements, different structures of these basic units of motion. They call them motion loops sometimes.
Motion loops. Oh, okay, interesting. So if everything is just arrangements of motion, how does that automatically connect everything?
Well, think about it. If the most basic ingredients of reality are these patterns of motion and they all exist within the same dynamic field.
Now they're already linked.
Exactly. The connection doesn't need to be established between separate things because there aren't fundamentally separate things. It's all interwoven from the get-go. It's all part of the same fabric of structured motion.
Huh. That really does flip the usual picture.
Huh.
We normally think, little particles first, then forces connecting them.
Right.
But this sounds like the connection itself is primary, which makes me think, what about something really weird like quantum entanglement?
Yes. Well, what's fascinating is how the theory looks at particles themselves. They aren't seen as tiny separate billiard balls. Okay.
They're described more like stable, repeating rhythms, like little whirlpools of motion within this bigger underlying sea of motion.
Rhythms. Okay. And how do these rhythms interact, if not forces?
They influence each other through something called synchronization gradients.
Synchronization gradients, right.
Yeah.
What does that mean exactly?
Imagine you have a bunch of pendulum clocks hanging on the same wall. Even if they start out of sync.
They eventually start swinging together.
Often, yeah. They influence each other through tiny vibrations in the wall, right? Without directly touching. Motion theory suggests something similar happens fundamentally. These motion loops, these rhythms, they tend to align their patterns, they sync up, creating these gradients of shared rhythm.
And that's how entanglement fits in, the whole spooky action at a distance thing.
Exactly. From this viewpoint, entangled particles aren't two separate things sending secret messages.
They're what?
They're described as parts of the same original rhythmic pattern. They never really separated in that sense. So when you observe one, the other instantly shows the corresponding property because it's part of the same dance.
Precisely. It's not reacting. It's just continuing. It's part of that shared synchronized pattern. Like, imagine plucking one end of a guitar string. The whole string vibrates, right? Both ends are part of the same event.
So no faster than light messages zipping back and forth.
Not needed in this model. It's about maintaining that inherent relationship that was established when the pattern formed. The connection wasn't really broken by space. Space just changes the local conditions, maybe. And they talk about sync drift, too. That's their explanation for why entanglement seems to fade. Decoherence, they say, isn't information loss. It's the rhythm losing its original fidelity, its sharpness.
That is a profoundly different take, okay? And does this rhythmic idea apply upwards?
Yeah.
To the big forces like gravity?
It does. This is where it gets really interesting, I think. Motion theory reinterprets gravity, electromagnetism, even the nuclear forces, not as fundamental forces carried by particles, but as emergent effects. Effects arising from these deeper rhythmic relationships and how structured motion behaves.
Okay, let's tackle gravity then. If it's not mass attracting mass, what is it?
Gravity, in this framework, is seen as a tendency for motion loops to converge, to move towards areas where the background motion is more synchronized, more coherent.
So like finding the strongest beat on the dance floor.
Kind of, yeah. Imagine regions where the universal rhythm is stronger, more organized. Other motion patterns, other stuff will naturally tend to get drawn into that rhythm align with it.
Yeah.
That's what we perceive as gravity. It's more about alignment than pulling.
Which might help bridge that gap between general relativity and quantum mechanics.
That's one of the potential implications, yes. Seeing gravity as emerging from these deeper quantum-level synchronization dynamics.
Okay, so it's motion aligning with more synchronized motion.
Got it. What about electromagnetism? Also reinterpreted through motion. Think of it as specific kinds of structured ripples or disturbances propagating through this motion field, like patterns of motion redistribution within these rhythm zones.
And these patterns then affect other motion loops nearby.
Right, leading to what we measure as electric and magnetic effects. It's about how these structured motion patterns influence the synchronization of others.
And the strong and weak forces inside the atom.
Those are viewed more as internal dynamics, mechanisms that maintain the stability within a motion loop, or define the thresholds where that internal sync can break down or change. So less about external forces, more about the integrity of the rhythm itself.
Wow, so the universe isn't run by 4 separate forces pulling strings.
But rather by this underlying web of rhythmic relationships. That's the picture, yeah.
The dance floor analogy really works then.
Yeah.
Dancers influencing each other through the shared music, the shared rhythm, not by grabbing each other.
Exactly. From particles to galaxies, everything is responding to and contributing to this overall cosmic rhythm.
Okay, the implications are huge. What about us?
Yeah.
Biology, life.
Yeah, motion theory looks at the human body as this incredibly complex rhythm stack.
A rhythm stack.
Think about it. Oscillating cells, proteins folding in rhythmic ways, neurons firing in complex patterns, heartbeats, breathing. It's rhythms all the way down and all the way up. A hierarchy of synchronized motion.
So being alive is basically maintaining this complex symphony of rhythms.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
And your sense of self, your identity, it's not some extra ghost in the machine. It's the persistent coherence, the stable pattern of all this synchronized activity that makes up you.
And thoughts, feelings.
Thoughts are framed as transient sync patterns in the brain, moments where large networks of neurons achieve a temporary specific coherence, like a flash of synchronized rhythm that pops into awareness and then fades.
Okay.
And you know that feeling of connection you get sometimes, meditating maybe, or dancing or singing with others? The theory suggests that's not just woo, it's potentially your internal bodily rhythms, literally synchronizing and training with external rhythms, be it music, nature, or other people. It's physics happening. Rhythmic entrainment.
Grounding those experiences in physics.
Mm-hmm.
That's fascinating. Does it go even bigger to how we perceive the cosmos? Looking at a star, say.
Absolutely. If synchronicity is fundamental, then seeing a distant star isn't just about passively catching old photons.
It's more active.
It could involve our own internal rhythms actually synchronizing in some way with the ongoing rhythmic pattern of that star across vast distances.
So we're not just seeing the past light, we're kind of tuning in.
That's a way to put it, yeah. Perception as an active resolution of motion across these universal rhythm gradients. We align to the star's rhythm, perhaps, rather than it just shining at us.
And telescopes, those images of galaxies billions of light years away.
They're seen as capturing a motion lock-in. You're locking onto the pattern. Now, the sync bandwidth might be really degraded over that distance, so the resolution of the rhythmic information is lower.
Less sharp, maybe.
Exactly. But it's still reflecting the star or galaxy's state within the constraints of that connection. It's a present moment connection, just a very low bandwidth one for very distant things.
So bottom line, everything we see, everything we are, from tiny particles to huge galaxies, it's all already part of one vast interconnected system of motion.
That's the core message. And consciousness itself, in this view, it's what happens when motion becomes complex enough to start referencing itself, when the rhythms become aware of their own patterns.
So the universe isn't just made of stuff, it's made of rhythm.
Primarily, yes. And that phrase, everything is connected, it stops being just a nice thought.
It becomes a mechanical description, a mathematical one even.
According to motion theory, yes. It's literal truth based on structured motion and synchronization. Connection isn't something we need to build, it's already here. We're just maybe remembering it or figuring out how it works.
Wow, that gives that simple phrase so much more weight. Okay, so if this is true, if connection is fundamental, baked into the physics of motion, what does that mean for us? For how we interact with the world, with each other?
It certainly opens up new ways to think.
It really does. Thinking about a universe built on rhythm, not just separate bits. Thanks for unpacking all that with me.
My pleasure. A fascinating topic.
And for you listening, here's something to chew on. If connection is truly fundamental, woven into reality through motion, How might that change your perspective, your place in this cosmic dance? What opens up when you see the universe not just as objects, but as this incredible symphony of rhythms? Something to think about until our next deep dive.